A good year and a gemach simateva to everyone. This year, there was a little bit of change in the schedule of the Farbrengens. The Rebbe did not Farbring Friday, late afternoon, which would be the usual time for the Rosh Hashanah Farbrengen. However, the Rebbe Farbringed Shabbos afternoon as usual, and there was a Farbrengen Shabbos in the late afternoon, which was extended into the evening, and that was the Farbrengen in continuation to Rosh Hashanah. The Farbrengen of Shabbos afternoon, the Rebbe brought out that this Farbrengen is the first Farbrengen this year. And as it comes out this year, that Shabbos comes close to the days of Rosh Hashanah. From Rosh Hashanah we are entering straight into Shabbos. And therefore, we have to analyze what is the difference between Shabbos and Yontif. And Bechlal, a person is created to understand things, and to harave, to toil, and be able to understand things properly. As the Pasuk says, Adam lo amal yivalit. And actually this also has a shaykhs to Rosh Hashanah, because Rosh Hashanah is the day when man was created. And as Chazal tell us, the reason that man was created last is that once he is created, he's already finding everything ready. Because otherwise the question arises, why wasn't man created first? Being that the entire intention of the world is to create a person, so if so, the Rebbe should have created the person first. But the answer on this is that the main goal of creating the world is because of people. However, the Rebbe in reality, in actuality, created a person at last, so that when he's created, he's finding everything that he needs ready, as the expression goes in Chazal, Sheyimtza hakoil muchan l'suda. But the truth is, the ikar of the world is people. The Rebbe compared it, we find in halach and the halachas of brachas, we find when there is an ikar and a tafel, something which is the main part of a meal and something which is side, not as essential, we make the bracha first on the main part that has a preference, and then first we make the bracha on the tafel. Getting back to the difference of Shabbos and Yontif. The Rebbe says we find that when we go from Shabbos into Yontif, we make Havdalah between Shabbos and Yontif. However, when we go from Yontif into Shabbos, we do not make no Havdalah, but all we do is we make Kiddush, as we did this year. First we had the Yontif, Thursday and Friday was Rosh Hashanah, and from Rosh Hashanah, from the Yontif, we entered into Shabbos, and all we made was Kiddush. To understand this, we have to understand what is the difference between Shabbos and Yontif. Shabbos, we stay away totally from Malacha. We are prohibited to do any type of work. However, Yontif, we are permitted to do work that relates to food, anything that relates to cooking. We are permitted to do on Yontif. On the other hand, there's something in Yontif which we do not have in Shabbos, and that is the fact of Simcha. The main idea of Yontif is Simcha. Even though regarding Shabbos there's a pasuk over Yom Simchaschem, and Chazal explained that this pasuk refers to Shabbos as well. But this we have to derive from a pasuk, from a special limud, from learning it all from a special pasuk. The main idea of Yontif is Moyadim l'Simcha. And that is why it's even expressed in the Beis HaMikdash. There were special karbanos, which are called Shalmei Simcha. These karbanos were brought when? On Yontif only, not on Shabbos. This again emphasizes how the main idea of Yontif is Simcha. And with this we can understand why when Shabbos comes before Yontif, we do make a Havdalah. And when Shabbos comes following Yontif, all we make is Kiddush. What is the difference between Kiddush and Havdalah? Havdalah is the taich, a separation. We come from something which has more Kedusha to something which has less Kedusha. Separation. What is the idea of Kiddush? Kiddush is an elevation. Kiddush is Miloshin Kedusha, Milmato Lamaila, from bottom up, as brought out in Rambam, and Rashi brings out on Pasik, Chumash, where the Torah says, Kedoshim to you. So Rashi explains it's an idea of precious, an idea of an elevation. And that is why when Yontif comes before Shabbos, there is no room to say that between Yontif and Shabbos we should make Havdalah. Because as mentioned earlier, Havdalah we make when we draw a line and we want to go from something that has more Kedusha to something that has less Kedusha. The Kedusha of Shabbos is greater than the Kedusha of Yontif. That is why there's no room to make Havdalah. We cannot make Havdalah when we go from Yontif into Shabbos. However, once we go from Shabbos into Yontif, there we have to make Havdalah. Why? Because we cannot say we will only make Kiddush, as we brought out earlier, that Kiddush means and where we separate ourselves, Kiddusha v'hafrosha, because that's not the idea of Yontif. The idea of Yontif is that we involve everyone in our simcha. We don't separate ourselves from others. What is the concept of Yontif? As the Rambam explains, that he should not celebrate his Simchas Yontif when he's alone. The whole idea of Simchas Yontif is to join in with others and to involve people from all walks of people, all kinds of people. So this is not the concept of Kiddush. On the contrary, this stresses more the concept that there is a need for Havdalah here, and Kiddush does not even fit in here. Because Kiddush is an union of separation. Separation we cannot say at a time when we are told that we have to intermingle with others and involve everyone into our simcha. But getting back to the way it is this year we had first the Yontif, and from the Yontif we are going to a yet higher level, which is the idea of Shabbos. Shabbos has all the specialties that Shabbos has, as brought out in Chazal, that everything on Shabbos is double, starting from Lechem Mishnah to Chalas and many other inyanim in Shabbos, which are double. And as this is explained at length in Lekutei Torah, in the very first Maim. And here when the Rebbe mentions the Lekutei Torah, the first Maim of the Lekutei Torah, the Rebbe got into a lengthy explanation that we have the Svarim of Torah Oyer and Lekutei Torah, which are both Mamorim of the Alter Rebbe, set up according to Pashas HaShavua. And they were both arranged by the Tzemach Tzedek. Nonetheless, the Svarim have two separate names. Torah Oyer is one name, and these are Mamorim and Bereshis and Shmois. The Mamorim of Vayikra, Bamidbar, and Devarim, they are in the Sefer of Lekutei Torah. There's a letter from the Frierdiker Rebbe where he refers to it at length and gives reason why the names were changed, and he explains that in those times they had a lot of problem where there was a census and caused a lot of problems for printing Jewish Svarim, printing Hasidic Svarim, and therefore they were forced to change the name, and it took quite a few years between the Torah and the Lekutei Torah. But what question the Rebbe raised yesterday was, why is it that the first Maimah of Lekutei Torah is a Maimah on Pashas B'Shalach? B'Shalach belongs to Chumash Shmois, so this should have been in the Torah here, and not in the Lekutei Torah. And to say that it's a practical reason that the Tzemach Tzedek did not have this Maimah while he arranged the Torah here, and it is only later when he was setting up and editing the Lekutei Torah, that is when he got this Maimah. It's something which is very hard to say, because obviously the Tzemach Tzedek had all the Mamorim already at the time when he was editing the Torah here. And also, Pashas Pkudei. Mamorim and Pashas Pkudei are in Lekutei Torah. And obviously these Mamorim should have belonged to be in the Torah. But again, like each time there is a Yerida, there is a letdown, it's a Yerida Tzorech Aliyah, so that we should gain by it. So interesting, the Rebbe points out that in Lekutei Torah there are much more commentaries from the Tzemach Tzedek as in the Torah. Many inyanim which are in the parentheses in the Lekutei Torah, this is what the Tzemach Tzedek added on his own explanation. So this is what we gained by waiting for the Lekutei Torah. We waited years and there was a problem. The dealing with the government problem that they did not allow for a certain amount of years to print the Sefer, and finally it was printed. But what we gained by it that here we have additional commentary from the Tzemach Tzedek, which is opposed to Torah Eir, and Torah Eir, the Tzemach Tzedek did not put in his ha'aras, his commentary, his comments. And it says, could also be that for this reason it is called Likutei Torah. It is a compiling, a likut of Torahs, because it does not only have the Torah of the Alter Rebbe, it has Torahs from the Alter Rebbe, and obviously the Tzemach Tzedek put it in Yonim from the Mittel Rebbe as well, and in Yonim from the Tzemach Tzedek. And the Rebbe continued that this year is the special year, because this year we are coming from the year of Tehei Shnas Nisim, and we're going into a year which we have the same abbreviation, but with an additional aleph. And when we say an additional aleph, it's referring to the Rabbeinu Shalom. And this inyan of Tehei Shnas Arenu Nifloyes, where we should envision miracles, this inyan of Riyah also has to be reflected in Limud HaTorah. That we will learn Torah in a format of vision, which is a very high level of learning Torah. And with this we can also explain, the Gemara brought in Chazal that when Mashiach will come, he will teach Torah to all of Klal Yisrael. And actually everything has to be done in the realm of nature. How will it be possible for Mashiach to teach Torah to Klal Yisrael? So it will only be able to be, that it will be through Re'iyah, through vision. To emphasize the fact that all in Yonim of Torah have to be done through Teva, through nature. The Rebbe referred to the famous episode with Alter Rebbe, that when Alter Rebbe was in prison, he was once taken by boat, from being transferred from one prison cell to another one. And Alter Rebbe saw a new moon, and he wanted to be Mechadish the Levana. So he asked the person who was in charge of him that he should stop the boat and give the Alter Rebbe an opportunity to be Mechadish the Levana. He refused. So the boat stopped by itself. Naturally, it was a miracle from the Alter Rebbe. The fellow realized that this was accomplished by the Alter Rebbe, and then later they continued to travel a little bit more. And then later the Alter Rebbe asked him again to stop the boat so that he could be Mechadish Levana, and he granted him permission. So the question arises, the Alter Rebbe was capable of stopping the boat. So when he had stopped the boat the very first time, he could have been done Mechadish Levana. Why did he have to come on to the permission of the person in charge of him that he should willingly stop the boat? So the explanation on this is given that all matters of mitzvahs, a yid has to be mekayim according to Teva, according to nature. And especially this year, that as mentioned, we are going from Yontif into Shabbos. So we have 3 days, and 3 days emphasizes an inyan of a chazakah. And even in Eretz Yisrael, where they normally celebrate 1 day Yontif, they also have Rosh Hashanah, which is celebrated for 2 days, all over, even in Eretz Yisrael. So there they have 3 days in a row, in the idea of Yom Tovim. And to us in Chutz La'aretz, we will have the same thing again the first days of Sukkot, and the same thing again in the second days of Sukkot. Furthermore, even in Eretz Yisrael, true, there's no Simchas Torah, but they celebrate Simchas Torah together with Shmini Atzeres. So, and the same thing when we're talking about the first days of Sukkot. All the revelations which we have in the second day of Sukkot, they have in the first day the revelations from the first and second day together. So actually they have all the Inyanim and Eretz Yisrael as well. And here the Rebbe brings out that the second day of Rosh Hashanah could never come out on a Shabbos. When Rosh Hashanah comes out on a Shabbos, we do not blow shofar. However, only the first day of Rosh Hashanah could come out on a Shabbos. The second day of Rosh Hashanah could never come out on Shabbos. So the second day of Rosh Hashanah has this specialty that under all circumstances we always blow shofar on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. Especially this year. This year we blew the shofar on both days. And from the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah we are entering into the Aseret Yemei Tshuva. And from Aseret Yemei Tshuva we will be coming to Yom Kippur. Aseret Yemei Tshuva also have this special inyan. The Gemara refers to Aseret Yemei Tshuva. The Gemara uses the expression Asara Yomim, the 10 days that are between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Actually, the Gemara could have said the first 10 days of the year is a siman that the specialty of these days What's so special about these days? That these days get from Rosh Hashanah and from Yom Kippur. It says the Rebbe, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur have separate advantages which one has that the other one doesn't. Rosh Hashanah has something outstanding within it. Yom Kippur has something outstanding within it, and both of these Yomim Tovim contribute to the days of in between. Especially now that we are in the Shabbos Shuva, or as we will call it, Shabbos Shuva. We can call it Shabbos Shuva with the Tov because it's part of the Aseres Yemei Shuva. We can call it Shabbos Shuva because this is because of the special Haftarah which we say on this Shabbos, which begins with the words Shuva Yisrael, that a Yid can return and he will reach Ad Hashem Elokecha. A Yid can reach up to HaKadosh Baruch. I'll be continued in the Farbrengen. This Shabbos is Shabbos Pashas Haazinu. The Chazarah begins Haazinu-Hashamayim Vadabeira V'Sishma Ha'aretz Imrifi. And as we already brought out at previous occasions, the expression of Haazinu as well as the expression of Tishma both mean hear, to hear and to listen. Nonetheless, there's a difference. Haazinu is a listening from close. Haazinu has the word oizen in it, which means an ear. It goes directly from the ear, very close. Tishma also means to hear. However, it's a hearing, a kind of hearing which can come from the distance as well. And when we're talking about Shamayim and Aretz, Shamayim refers to Ruchnius, as opposed to Aretz that refers to Gashmius. So what does Moshe Rabbeinu tell a Yid? Haazinu-Hashamayim, that he should know that spiritual matters have to be close to him. And Aretz matters, earthly matters, this is something that can remain at a distance from him. So the question arises, asks the Rebbe, Moshe was the one that received the Torah from Sinai, and he gave it over to all later generations. How can Moshe demand from all the following generations, and from all Yidden, in any kind of circumstances which Yidden will be, that they should stand in such a level that to spiritual matters they should be Haazinu, they should be close, and to Ruchnius they should be close, and to Gashmis they should be at a distance? Says the Rebbe, the interpretation of this is that a Yid, through learning Torah, is capable of uplifting himself to the level of Torah. And the level of Torah lifts him so high that he can be at this level close to Shamayim and at a distance of Aretz. And especially when we're talking about it on this special Shabbos of Shabbos Shuva. And this is the Shabbos, as mentioned earlier, between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And there are 7 days actually between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. We say it's Aseres Yemei Shuva, but if you take off the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah and the day of Yom Kippur, you're left with 7 days. So it's brought out in the Arizal that each of these 7 days corresponds to another day of the week. Sunday relates to all the Sundays of the year, Monday to all the Mondays of the year, and so forth. And actually, these days relate and are a continuation of the month of Elul, so it really relates to the past year as well. Because as mentioned already previously, Elul is abbreviated in the pasuk of Ani L'Doidi V'Doidi Li. Each one of these words ends with a Yud. So we have 4 times Yud is 40, 4 times 10 is 40. These are the special 40 days from the beginning of the month of Elul until after Yom Kippur. So it's in these days that we can accomplish and correct whatever went wrong in the past year and set ourselves straight for the following year. Says the Rebbe, therefore, on this Shabbos, the hero from this is, the lesson which we derive from this is, that on this Shabbos everybody should accept upon themselves proper decisions which relate to all matters of Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasodim. And these decisions should be brought down into a reality, to bring it down into a Poel Mamish, and this would hasten the coming of Mashiach. The Rebbe again continued the Farbrengen with this inyan of Haazinu-Hashamayim V'Sishma Ha'aretz. Well, the question arises, obviously Moshe is standing in Aretz. So if Moshe is standing in Aretz, first he should have related to Aretz, and later he should relate to Shamayim. And again, Moshe, as mentioned earlier, Moshe is saying something which will have a shaykhus, which will relate to Yid in all generations. And a Yid, most of his life, he spends on this world. And It not in Shamayim, but he spends it on Eretz. It's just when a person goes to sleep, that is when his neshama goes up to Shamayim, and only a very little of it remains here ba'aretz. But again, a Yid, most of his life, he's in Eretz. Even the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu was also lamata ba'aretz. Where were they? They were in a desert, and went through all kinds of problems. We're here in Eretz, and nonetheless, Moshe begins with Shamayim. Rabbi says apparently we would be able to answer that a Yid through learning Torah reaches the level of Shamayim. However, this is unacceptable. Why? Because we know it's always brought in Gemara and Halacha that a Yid learns Torah and has tremendous accomplishments and achievements through learning Torah, but nonetheless, Torah remains here, Lamata. And all Piskei Dinim, all rulings and decisions of Torah can only be made by the Bezdin Shalmata. As the expression goes, Torah loy b'shamayim, Torah is not in heaven. Torah, once the Rebbe gave it to the Jewish nation, Yidden here have an authority to paskin halachas, to issue all decrees on halachic matters, and this is how the halacha remains. This obviously was left in a question, and here the Rebbe called for all those that have submitted mashke should come up, and the Rebbe gave them mashke, and they should all announce for what occasion this is for. From them people should follow in their footsteps. Mehem yiru v'chein yasu, to do good things and good celebrations. We will now continue a little bit into the second Farbrengen. The Rebbe began that this Farbrengen, which is taking place on Shabbos, is a continuation to Rosh Hashanah. And as we spoke earlier, that this year Shabbos comes following Rosh Hashanah. And as we spoke earlier, Shabbos has an advantage and a plus even like Abi Yontif, as we can even find it when Shabbos falls out on Rosh Hashanah. Not this year, but when Shabbos falls out on Rosh Hashanah and we make Kiddush, how do we conclude the bracha? Mekadesh HaShabbos. First we mention Shabbos, and then we continue V'yom HaZikaron and we mention Rosh Hashanah. So this right away shows us the advantage of Shabbos, because if we mention Shabbos earlier, this indicates that Shabbos is at a higher level than Rosh Hashanah. Furthermore, in Torah itself, first we were told about Shabbos, and then we were told about Rosh Hashanah. And an order in Torah is also part of Torah. To the extent that the commandment of Shabbos is one of the Aseres HaDibros. Even though, in time sequence, the whole idea of Rosh Hashanah comes prior to Shabbos, because Rosh Hashanah celebrates that is the 6th day of creation, as opposed to Shabbos, which is the 7th day of creation. But nonetheless, Shabbos has an advantage over Yom Tov. And as the Rebbe brings it out, Shabbos is the source of Kedusha. And that is why Shabbos is called Kodesh Hilachem. Shabbos is Kodesh. Sanctity. That's Shabbos. Shabbos is the source of sanctity for all other Yomim Tovim as well. And that is why Yomim Tovim are called in the Torah Mikro Kodesh. We call the Kedusha, we call the sanctity. Where do we call it from? We call it from its source. What is its source? Its source is the Shabbos. And as mentioned earlier in the Farbrengen of the afternoon, Torah is not in heaven, and to the extent that when there is a Shaila even in the heavenly court, they also turn to the Bezdin Shalmata here, to the Bezdin in this world. And there's an expression in the Pasuk, Chaverim Makshivim L'koilech Hashmi'eni. The Rebbe says, let me know what is the ruling of the Bezdin Shalmata. Especially when we're talking about Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, it's brought many places that what is the main judgment of Rosh Hashanah is on Gashmiistic matters. So Havada that it relates to Gashmiyas. And as the Torah writes, that this nation, Yidden, have such a specialty that they are so confident, even prior to Rosh Hashanah, that we will be given a good and healthy year, that we dress in white clothes, which this is a celebration of victory. In other words, that even prior to Rosh Hashanah, we are right away under the impression that we will be blessed with all the brachas that a good year requires, a good and healthy, sweet year. And here the Rebbe said that all the brachas that we have in the Aleph base. The Rebbe began from Aleph through Taf, listing all the brachas. Aleph, Shnas Oira, a year of Lichtigkeit. Beis is a year of bracha. Gimel, Gadlus, greatness. Daled, Ditza. Ditza is an expression of happiness and joy. Hoid, V'hoda, that's beauty, glory. Shnas Va'atoiv, Shnas Zochi is G'doyle, is big credits, big merits. Ches is Chasadim, Shnas Chasadim G'doylem. The Rebbe will do with us tremendous Chasadim. Toiv is G'doyle, he will do with us very big good. Shnas Yud Toiv. Shnas Kalkola Ba'atzlocha Rabba Mefloga, the Rebbe says, the economy will be with a lot of success. Lamet is limud, learning, will be able to learn Torah with a lot of success. And Shnas Meroimim, a year of elevation. And Nun means Nisim G'dolim, we will be getting big miracles from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, especially that we are leaving the year of miracles, Shnas Nisim, and we are entering into a year where we are gaining the Aleph, our Enu Niflois. So we will definitely have tremendous Nisim, tremendous wonders which will lead to the ultimate Geula. And as it's brought that when the Rebbe will take us out of this Gullus, these Nisim, the miracles that he will do, will be in no comparison to the miracles that we had when we went out of Mitzrayim. Then the Rebbe continued, Samach, Simen Toiv, good signs, good indications. Shnas Oiz V'Hodar, a year of Oiz means strength and power. Shnas Pedus, a year of redemption. Shnas Tzaka, Shnas Kedusha Fakuf, V'Koimemius, a holy year. Shnas Roimemus, a year of elevation, a year of Simcha, a year of Torah, Tshuva, Tefillah, and Tehillah, meaning praise. And the main thing, that this should be a year that should lead us to the Geula Shleima through Mashiach Tzidkenu. And then we will have the 10th of songs. The Shira Asiris, the 10th song, which we will have with the coming of Mashiach. Especially now that we are already past the 7 weeks which come after Tisha B'Av, when we say the 7 Haftarahs, which are entitled as Shiva D'Nechemta, 7 Haftarahs of condolence. And then we had 2 special Haftarahs on the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. And then we had the special Haftarah which was said on Shabbos Shuva, which begins, Shuva Yisrael, return to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ki choshalta b'aveinecha. The simple meaning is, because we sinned. Ovei means an Aveira. Says the Rebbe, doesn't really mean an Aveira in the true sense. Ovei is meloshin ivus, meloshin crooked. It means things were done, but they weren't done the right way. Chas v'shalom, a Yid is not doing an Aveira. A Yid is not at a level of sinning. A Yid and a sin have no relation. However, he did things, but the things were not done proper. They were done a little bit crooked. So what do we say? That even from this, we are also doing tshuva. We are trying to correct that also, until ultimately everything is turned into mitzvahs. Everything's doines nasuk izachiyas. And especially that the contents of this haftarah is geula, and how the Rebbe will gather all the Yidden, including the Aseres HaShvatim, the 10 tribes as well, from behind the mountains where they were sent into, and will gather all of us and bring us all to the Geula Shleima, which actually, a taste of it, we already had this year. Because this year we had something special that many Yidden came out of, from behind the Iron Curtain, under unusual circumstances. In fact, the government even helped their leaving. They're leaving the country, which this is a taste of what it'll be like la'asad lavai. And the main thing is that we should really be up to the whole Indian of La'asid Lavai. The idea of Arenu Neflo is when the Rebbe will envision us all of these tremendous and great miracles. The Rebbe continued that it's customary that on Rosh Hashanah we mention the names of all of the Nesiim. And mentioning their names by their titles and not by their personal names. As the Rebbe explained, beginning from the Baal Shem Tov, not Rabbi Yisrael, but the Baal Shem Tov. Then the Maggid, not by his name, Abdev Ber, but rather the Maggid of Mizrich. And the same thing the Alter Rebbe, not by his name Shneir Zalman, but by his title, the Alter Rebbe. The Mitteler Rebbe, why was he called Mitteler? Because he was in the middle between the Alter Rebbe and the Tzemach Tzedek. But again, this is the name we will refer to him, and not by his personal, but by his title. And the same by the Tzemach Tzedek, even though the name Tzemach Tzedek was given to him because of his Sefer, which was printed after he passed away. And the reason his Sefer was given the name Tzemach Tzedek is because Tzemach Tzedek, in numeric value, is the same as his name Menachem Mendel. But nonetheless, we refer to him as the Tzemach Tzedek. And the same thing with the Rebbe Maharash, as he's known with the Rosh Tevis Maharash, and not with his name Shmuel, even though the name has a special shaykhus to Rosh Hashanah, because the Haftarah, which we say on Rosh Hashanah, is about Shmuel Hanavi, the Shira of Chana. Or we will refer to him by his title, which also defines him that one of the Katrila Ariba, because he was the one that always kept on stressing that our Avodas Hashem has to be above and beyond. There's a famous expression that the world says that when we cannot go under, we go over. The Rebbe Maharash said, he continued in Ichzog, he says that we have to go initially over. And as it's interpreted always by the Rebbe, that means that our approach to matters of Torah mitzvahs always have to be in a way of above and beyond. And the same regarding the Rebbe Rashab, whose name was Shalom Dov Ber, Shalom, which is the highest level of bracha, because as Chazal tell us, Im Shalom Kan Hakel Kan, when there is peace, there is everything. Same Indian of Dov Ber. What is the Indian of a dove, of a beer? So the Gemara tells us that a beer is mesurbal bebasar. A beer has a tremendous amount, an overflow of meat on him. What was that Indian of the Rebbe Rashab? The Rebbe Rashab, by founding Temchet Mimim, he instilled this idea to convert the pleasures of Olam Hazeh to Kedusha. In other words, an Indian of meat, which is a pleasure of Olam Hazeh, to convert this to Kedusha. But nonetheless, we do not refer to him by his name. We will refer to him by the Rebbe Rashab. And the same regarding his son, who took over leadership from him, who was the Frierdiker Rebbe, also not by his name Yosef Yitzchak, which Yosef, though emphasizes the Indian of Yosef Hashem Li Bein Acher, as we brought out many times, the interpretation of the Tzemach Tzedek on this pasuk, that his avodah was that even one who is on the level of an Acher should be considered and uplifted to become a child to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a Bein to Hashem. And the same meaning of Yitzchak, which emphasizes Simcha, Kol Hashemeya Yitzchak Li. So we're not referring to them by their names. Until talking about Nesiim, until we come to the source of all Nesiim, which was Yaakov Avinu. As the word Nasi abbreviates, Nitzutzoi Shel Yaakov Avinu, a spark of Yaakov Avinu. So we must say that even Avram v'Yitzchak, who lived before Yaakov, and they were also Nesiim, their neshamas had a shaykhus to the neshama of Yaakov. So this mentioning the Rabbeim on Rosh Hashanah, this is an idea like mentioning Schus Avos. Just like the Gemara tells us that every morning at the Beis HaMikdash they would ask, Heir Pnei HaMizrach Shebechevron, is there already light that we can bring the Korban Tabit? And the expression was, is it already light in Chevron? So the Yerushalmi explains, why did they have to mention Chevron? They could have asked the same question, is it already light? And the answer that the Yerushalmi gives, that the reason for it was in order to mention Schus Avos. By mentioning Chevron, we are mentioning our patriarchs Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, because they are buried in the Chevron. So the same thing when it comes Rosh Hashanah, we mention the Schus Avos, the Chassidish Rabbeim, our Avos. As the Rebbe continued later, it's also customary not only to mention the Rabbeim, but also to sing a nigun to everyone that relates to every one of the Rabbeim, beginning from the Baal Shem Tov. There is one nigun that incorporates three parts, one part from the Baal Shem Tov, one part from the Maggid, and the third part from the Alter Rebbe, the famous nigun of the three parts. So this nigun said the Rebbe should be sung 3 times. In other words, once for the Baal Shem, once for the Maggid, once for the Alter Rebbe. And then to continue again with a nigun of the Alter Rebbe, and to sing a nigun for each one of the Rabbeim. And before they began singing each one of the nigunim, it was announced the nigun of which Rebbe it is. And Rabbi Yoel, who began each of the nigunim, after singing a nigun that relates to the Friedrich Rebbe, began the song of Atov V'Chatonu, which is a song which was taught to us by the Rebbe Zal Gesund Sei. Then before the end of the Farbrengen, the Rebbe said that the Gemara tells us regarding an incident where a Tanis, a day of fast, was postponed to the next day. And then there was a ruling that being that it was already postponed, let it be totally put aside. Says the Rebbe, the same we're talking now about the fast of Gedalia. The fast of Gedalia really is supposed to be on 3 days of Tishrei. This year we couldn't have it on 3 days of Tishrei because 3 days of Tishrei was on Shabbos. So it was already postponed. Let this be a key to it, that all the days of fast should be totally postponed. And then we will have the Geula, and it will be Kitzu V'Ranenu Sheikh Neyofa, everyone will rise in Tchias HaMesim, including Gedalia, who is a descendant of Malchus Beis David. And then we will have the third Beis HaMikdash, which includes the first 2 Batei Mikdash, because the first 2 Batei Mikdash were taken by HaKadosh Baruch Hu from us as a collateral. As the Pasuk says, Eilep Kudei HaMishkan. So Chazal interpret, it doesn't only mean Mishkan, it means Mashkoin, which means a collateral. That the Rebbe, Eilep Kudei HaMishkan, Mishkan HaEdu. So the word Mishkan is repeated twice, because the Rebbe took twice a collateral, 2 Mashkoinos from us, by taking away the first Beis HaMikdash and taking away the second Beis HaMikdash. So the Rebbe would give us this back, as the Rambam explains, that the Beis HaMikdash third Beis HaMikdash will be built based on the first 2 Batei Mikdash. And when we're talking about the Rambam, the word Rambam right away reminds us miracles. Because what does the word Rambam abbreviate? Revois moifsai be'eretz Mitzrayim. Especially through learning the Torah of the Rambam. What is the specialty of the Torah of the Rambam? Torah of the Rambam is that the Rambam in his Sefer has a complete Torah. All matters of Torah are discussed in the Rambam Sefer. So let this lead to Arenu Niflois, that we shall have envision tremendous miracles, and all of this should be Lamata Ma'asara Tfachim. We should all be tangible, we should all be able to feel it. The Karev Mamish with the coming of Mashiach. A good year and a Gemach Simeteva.